At my daughter's 40th birthday party, in front of 60 family members, my son-in-law took the microphone and told everyone I had finally decided to let the family handle things. He said I had signed a property management agreement. He said I would be transitioning into a more restful chapter of my life. He said it with a smile so warm and rehearsed it looked like a television commercial for something you would never actually want to buy. I was standing at the back of the room near the dessert table. I was holding a slice of cake I hadn't touched. I could feel 60 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Some of them were pitying. Some of them were relieved, the way people look when a complicated problem seems to have solved itself quietly. My sister-in-law touched her husband's arm. My nephew nodded slowly. 60 people who had known me for decades, and in 20 seconds, my son-in-law had rewritten who I was in all of their minds. I had not signed anything. I set the cake down on the edge of the table. I walked into the hallway. I found my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 4 years. Jerome Veld, the man who had been my attorney and my closest friend before retirement, made us both too comfortable to keep up the old rhythms. I pressed call. It rang 3 times. When he answered, his voice was warm and already a little worried. "Cecil," he said. "Jerome," I said, "I need you to put your glasses on and listen very carefully." 6 days later, my son-in-law sat in a conference room at the Evanston field office of the Illinois Attorney General and answered questions for 2.5 hours. But I am getting ahead of myself. My name is Cecil Drummond. I am 67 years old. I spent 38 years working as a civil engineer in the greater Chicago area. Bridges, drainage systems, retaining walls, the kind of infrastructure nobody thinks about until the road buckles or the underpass floods. I know how things are built. More importantly, I know how things fail. I know how to look at something that seems solid and see the crack running through it before it becomes a catastrophe. I retired in 2020. My wife Pearl passed 18 months after that, pancreatic cancer. 4 months from diagnosis to gone. I don't talk about it much. What I will say is that the silence she left behind is a specific kind of silence. It has a shape. It fills rooms in a way that ordinary quiet doesn't. Pearl and I had 1 child, our daughter Naomi. She turned 40 the night her husband stood at a microphone and dismantled me in front of our family. Naomi is smart and capable and looks exactly like her mother did at that age, which some days is the greatest gift in the world and some days is almost too much to carry. She married my son-in-law 7 years ago. He sells commercial insurance. He is the kind of man who has an answer for every question before you finish asking it. I knew from the day I met him that he was more interested in what people had than in who they were. I told Pearl this once. She said I was being unfair. I believed her. I was wrong to believe her. The building I own sits on a corner of Green Bay Road in Evanston. 3 stories of old Chicago brick. I bought it as a condemned wreck in 1991 for $68,000, and at the time people thought I had lost my mind. I spent the next 4 years renovating it on weekends, with Pearl painting trim and our daughter, who was still a toddler, sleeping in a playpen in whichever room we were working in that day. The ground floor became retail space. The upper 2 floors became 4 apartments. The building has been fully occupied for 22 of the past 26 years. It is worth, as of the last appraisal, $2.9 million. It is the only substantial asset I have outside my pension and a modest investment account. Pearl wanted a fern on the landing of the 2nd floor. She said the tenants needed something living to look at on their way home. I still replace that fern every April. My son-in-law started asking questions about the building about 3 years ago. Casual questions at family dinners. What were the rents these days? Had I thought about simplifying? Was I still handling everything myself? I answered the way you answer questions you don't take seriously. He laughed each time, like I had said something endearing, like I was an old man explaining how his toys worked. After Pearl died, the questions changed. They became concerned. My daughter started calling more often, asking if I was keeping up with the paperwork. My son-in-law suggested very gently that a man my age living alone shouldn't have to carry the burden of property management. He used that word, burden. That was the first time I noticed the architecture of what he was building. Every conversation was a brick. Every gentle suggestion was mortar. He was constructing, carefully and patiently, a version of me that was struggling, a version of me that needed help, a version of me that was, in the word he would eventually use in front of 60 people, confused. I was not confused. What I was watching. After the birthday party, I drove home along the lakeshore. The water was flat and dark, and the city lights ran along its edge like a stitched hem. I had lived in this city for 40 years. I had poured concrete into its foundations. I had run the load calculations for 3 bridges that I could drive across any given morning. I got home and found an envelope on my kitchen table. Naomi had a key for emergencies. Inside the envelope was a 2-page document, a property management transfer agreement. At the bottom, on the signature line, was a signature that looked enough like mine to fool someone who had never watched me write my name. It did not fool me. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The house was very quiet. I looked at that signature, and I thought about Pearl standing on a ladder in that building with paint in her hair, laughing at something I had said. I thought about every Saturday morning we had spent there, the smell of sawdust and coffee, our daughter asleep in her playpen. I thought about what it would mean to let someone take that from me. Then I stopped thinking and picked up the phone and called Jerome. Jerome Veld spent 31 years as an attorney specializing in commercial real estate and estate law. He is 71 years old, and he golfs badly and reads well, and is the sharpest mind I have ever encountered in a room that didn't involve actual engineering. When I explained what had happened, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Don't touch the envelope. Don't confront anyone. Don't let them know what you know. Can you do that?" I said I could. "Good," he said. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow morning early. Bring the envelope in a plastic bag." I brought the bag. Jerome brought his reading glasses and a yellow legal pad and a look on his face that I recognized from the few times I had seen him in a courtroom. Something between calm and dangerous. He examined the document carefully. He examined the signature. He made notes. He told me what I already suspected. The signature was forged. The document had not been processed through any licensed notary he could verify, and the property management entity named in the agreement had been registered as an LLC just 9 weeks earlier. The registered agent was my son-in-law. I drove to the building that afternoon. My superintendent, a man who has worked there for 11 years and who I would trust with my life, met me at the back entrance. He told me that 3 weeks earlier, my son-in-law had come by and introduced himself to 2 of the tenants as the new property manager. He had given them a card. My superintendent had asked him to leave. My son-in-law had smiled and said there was no problem, it was all handled, he was just introducing himself. My superintendent had called me that same day. I had missed the call. I had been at a doctor's appointment. I checked my phone log standing right there in the alley. The missed call was there. I was the one who had missed it. I sat in my truck in the alley behind the building and stayed very still. I thought about the year my daughter had seemed more distant. I thought about the small things, the way she would nod along when her husband said I was slowing down, the way she had asked me twice whether I needed help with my paperwork, the way she had seemed almost uncomfortable when I insisted I was fine. He had been working on her for a long time. He had been patient about it. I will give him that much. He was patient and thorough, and those are qualities I respect in anyone except a man who is using them to dismantle what you have spent your life building. Then I thought about something else. My blood pressure medication. For 4 months I had been feeling off, not dramatically, a heaviness, a low-grade fatigue I had attributed to grief, to age, to the ordinary slow erosion of a body in its late 60s. My cardiologist had noted at my last visit that my pressure was running higher than expected given my dosage. He adjusted the prescription. It hadn't helped much. I had put it down to stress. I called the pharmacy from the truck. I gave them my name and asked them to confirm my prescription records. The pharmacist paused. Then she said, "Mr. Drummond, we've had a forwarding instruction on your account for the past 5 months. Your refills have been going to a different location." She gave me the address. It was a pharmacy 11 miles from my house. I had never used it. I had never authorized a transfer. I sat in that truck for a long time. The afternoon light moved slowly across the brick wall in front of me. A pigeon landed on the dumpster and looked at me and flew away. Someone had been intercepting my medication refills. I didn't know yet what had been substituted, if anything, but I knew my blood pressure had been unstable for months, and I knew who had a key to my house. I called Jerome from the truck. "Jerome," I said, "this isn't just a property dispute." He was quiet. "Tell me." I told him. He was quiet again for longer this time. When he spoke, his voice was very controlled. "Cecil, I want you to go to a different pharmacy first thing tomorrow morning. Get a new prescription filled in person, pay cash. Don't use your regular account. Tonight, don't take anything from the bottles at home." I won't, I said. And don't let them know what you know, not yet. Not yet, I agreed. The next morning I was at a different pharmacy when it opened. I paid cash. I called my cardiologist and explained there had been an unauthorized forwarding instruction on my account. He had me come in that afternoon for a blood panel. The results were not good, not catastrophic, but not good. My levels had been inconsistent in ways that matched a supply disruption, not a dosage adjustment. He used the word serious in a way that doctors use when they want you to understand they mean it without wanting to frighten you into something worse. That night I sat at the kitchen table Pearl and I had bought together in 1989 from a garage sale in Wilmette, the one we had stripped and refinished ourselves that winter, and I opened my laptop. I have a cloud-based security system on the building, 8 cameras, full coverage, with audio in the common areas. I logged in and scrolled back through 5 weeks of footage. On a Tuesday afternoon 6 weeks earlier, my son-in-law had met a man I didn't recognize in the lobby. They stood near the mailboxes. The audio was clear. My son-in-law said, and I watched his mouth move and heard the words at the same time, "The old man won't be sharp enough to challenge anything by the time we need the final signature. Give it another month, 2 at most." I stared at the screen. I am a civil engineer. I have spent my career analyzing load-bearing systems. I know what it looks like when a structure has been compromised at the foundation. I know what it sounds like when something is about to come down. I closed the laptop. I poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly at the kitchen counter, looking at Pearl's handwriting on a grocery list she had stuck to the refrigerator 3 years ago, and that I have never taken down. Then I sat down and started making calls. Jerome brought in an attorney who specializes in elder financial abuse, a woman named Teresa Nolan who had successfully prosecuted 4 similar cases in the past 3 years and who, within 20 minutes of reviewing what Jerome and I laid out, said, "This isn't just forgery. If he's been interfering with prescription medications, we're looking at criminal elder abuse under Illinois statute. And the property scheme crosses into federal wire fraud territory if he used electronic communication to advance it." She looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Drummond, has anyone suggested to you recently that you might be losing your mental capacity?" "Regularly," I said. She wrote something on her legal pad. "That's always the scaffolding," she said. 3 days before my son-in-law was planning to go to the bank, Jerome had learned through a contact in commercial lending that a loan application had been submitted using the forged management agreement as collateral. I went to First Midwest Bank and sat down with the branch manager. I had banked there for 27 years. I placed a fraud alert on every account associated with my Social Security number. I asked that any application involving the building be flagged for immediate supervisory review and that I be notified the moment anyone walked in with documents relating to it. The branch manager, who had known me since Pearl was alive, looked at the copy of the forged agreement and then looked at me and said, "Cecil, I will personally be at the desk." Then I told him the other thing, the thing my son-in-law did not know, the thing nobody knew except Jerome and my estate attorney and a nonprofit organization called the North Shore Veterans Housing Foundation. 5 years ago, 6 months before Pearl was diagnosed, I had restructured the ownership of the building. I placed it into an irrevocable charitable remainder trust, the Pearl Drummond Trust. The trust is co-managed by Jerome. The beneficiary organization, the entity that will own the building outright upon my death, is a foundation that uses donated properties to provide transitional housing for unhoused veterans in Cook County. I retained the right to manage the property and collect income for the rest of my life. But I gave up the right to sell it. I gave up the right to transfer it. I gave up the right to use it as collateral. My son-in-law had spent 3 years positioning himself to steal an asset I had already, legally and permanently, given away. What he was trying to take was not mine to be taken. And if he had somehow succeeded in using it as collateral, he would not have been stealing from a confused old man. He would have been stealing from veterans who had nowhere to live. On a Thursday morning, my son-in-law walked into First Midwest Bank, carrying a folder of documents and wearing a tie I had seen him wear to Easter dinner 2 years ago. The branch manager was at the desk. My son-in-law introduced himself. He presented the loan application. He presented the forged management agreement. He presented a supplemental letter, also forged as Jerome later confirmed, purporting to authorize him to act as my agent in financial matters. The branch manager looked at the documents. He excused himself. He was gone for 3 minutes. When he came back, he had two other people with him, and one of them was not a bank employee. My son-in-law was asked to wait. He waited for 19 minutes. Then the door opened. A detective from the Evanston Police Department entered, alongside an investigator from the Attorney General's Financial Crimes Division and Teresa Nolan, who had filed the criminal complaint 48 hours earlier. My son-in-law stood up from the chair. The color left his face in a single wave, the way ice releases from a windshield, all at once, from the edges in. I know this because I was parked across the street. I wasn't inside, I didn't need to be. I had said everything that needed saying. I had built the case the same way I had always built things, methodically, with attention to every load-bearing point. The detective's job was to make the arrest. My job had been to make sure the structure held. My daughter called me 40 minutes later. She had gotten a call from her husband's attorney. Apparently, before that attorney had understood the full scope of what had been done. Her voice moved through several things at once as she talked. Confusion, then fear, then something slower and heavier that I recognized as the sound of a person beginning to understand something they had been carefully kept from understanding. I let her talk. I said very little. When she finally stopped, I said, "I need to show you something. Can you come over?" She came. I showed her the security footage from the building. I showed her the pharmacy records. I showed her the forensic analysis of the forged signature. I showed her the trust documents, the ones I had signed 5 years ago, the ones that had given away the building long before her husband decided to take it. I showed her Jerome's notes and Teresa Nolan's complaint and the letter from my cardiologist about my blood levels. She sat at the kitchen table and didn't speak for a long time. She looked at Pearl's grocery list on the refrigerator. I think it was the first time she was seeing it as something other than an old piece of paper. I think she understood in that moment what I had been preserving all these years and what it had cost. Finally, she said, "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said. "He showed me things. He told me you'd called him 3 times thinking he was someone else. He said you'd forgotten to pay the insurance on the building." "The insurance has run on automatic draft for 15 years, I said. She put her face in her hands. I got up and made coffee. I put a cup in front of her and sat back down and waited. "What happens now?" she said. I wrapped my hands around my cup. "Your husband faces criminal charges," I said. "Elder financial abuse, forgery, and likely more when the prescription investigation concludes. Those matters run their course without my involvement." I paused. "As for the two of us, that depends on you. I'm not going anywhere. The building isn't going anywhere. But I'm not going to pretend that 3 years of you nodding along while someone built a case against your own father is nothing we need to work through. We'll have to do it honestly. That's the only way I know how to do anything." She didn't make promises. I respected her for that. My son-in-law was charged with elder financial abuse in the 1st degree, forgery of legal documents, and an unauthorized manipulation of a protected person's medical prescriptions. That last charge filed after investigators subpoenaed the pharmacy's forwarding records and traced the email authorization back to his account. He will not be coming home for some time. I am still in my house. The building is still on its corner. The fern Pearl wanted on the 2nd floor landing is a new one. I replaced it in April, same as every year. My superintendent keeps an eye on things. Jerome and I have coffee on Tuesday mornings. My blood pressure is under control. My daughter comes over on Sundays now. We cook. We don't talk about her husband. We talk about her mother, which is something we should have been doing all along, and which is difficult in the way that necessary things often are. I built a career understanding how weight is distributed, how stress moves through a structure, how the things you cannot see, the rebar inside the concrete, the load path running through the wall, are the things that determine whether something stands or falls. I built this family the same way I built everything else, with materials I trusted, in configurations I had thought through carefully, for loads I believed I had anticipated. What I had not anticipated was the quiet, patient damage a man with a long game can do to the people who love you when you are not watching closely enough. I am watching now. If you are sitting somewhere tonight, looking at something with your name on it that you never signed, I want you to hear this. The document is not who you are. You are not the confused old person they have decided to make you in their version of the story. You built your life with your own hands, and you know every load-bearing point. You know where the cracks are, and you know how to fix them. They are counting on you not knowing that. prove them wrong. Thank you for listening to my story. If it reached something in you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Leave me a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and tell me, has someone ever tried to rewrite your story without your permission? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong.